The statement arrived on a Tuesday morning. It sat on the kitchen table beside a cup of coffee that had already cooled. The envelope opened neatly with a letter opener I'd owned for 20 years. Most months I barely glanced at the numbers. Groceries, gas, a few small things from the pharmacy. Routine. But that morning one line stopped me. The 20,000 Ocean Crown Luxury Cruises. The number didn't look real at first. I thought perhaps it was a mistake, one of those temporary holds companies put on cards when you reserve something. I checked again. Then again. Still there. Outside the window a neighbor was mowing his lawn. The sound of the engine came and went as he turned the corner of his yard. The world felt strangely normal for a moment that was clearly not. I called my daughter. She answered on the second ring. "Oh good," she said brightly. "I was going to call you anyway." I asked about the charge. There was no hesitation in her voice. "Yeah, that was us." A pause followed. Not the kind filled with apology. The kind where someone expects you to move along with the explanation. "It's a cruise," she continued. "Jason's always wanted to do one. It's like his dream vacation." I looked again at the statement. $20,000. "Well, it's a nice one," she said, laughing lightly, and the card was already saved on the site. I waited. Sometimes silence makes people fill the space. This time it didn't. Then she added something with a small smirk I could almost hear through the phone. "You don't need the money anyway." It wasn't cruel. Not exactly. It was casual. That made it heavier. For a long moment I watched the neighbor finish his lawn and turn off the mower. The sudden quiet outside seemed to settle into the kitchen. Finally I said, "Enjoy it." She sounded relieved. "I knew you'd understand." The call ended quickly after that. She had errands to run, she said. Travel preparations. I folded the statement and placed it back in the envelope. Strangely, I didn't feel angry. Not immediately. What I felt was something slower, something that had been forming quietly for years. Understanding. My daughter and her husband lived in a house I bought nearly a decade earlier. At the time they were newly married and struggling. Rent was high, jobs were uncertain. Helping them seemed obvious. Just stay there for a while, I told them back then. A year passed. Then another. They started calling it their house. The first time I heard it, I almost corrected them. But they looked so settled there, so comfortable, so I let it go. Over time small assumptions grew around that decision. I covered property taxes. Occasionally a repair, once a new water heater. Each time it felt temporary. Each time it quietly became normal. A week later my daughter texted a photo from the airport. She and her husband stood in sunglasses with rolling suitcases behind them, smiling like people about to step into something exciting. "Boarding soon," the caption read. I replied with 2 words, "Have fun." When their ship left port, I made a phone call. The real estate agent arrived 2 days later. She was younger than I expected but moved through the house with professional calm, noting the updated kitchen cabinets and the backyard deck. "Location like this sells quickly," she said. I stood in the living room while she explained the current market. Apparently the neighborhood had changed a lot in 10 years. Property values had climbed steadily. "Are there tenants?" she asked. "My daughter lives here," I said. She nodded, waiting. "No lease." That was the entire explanation. Listing the house felt oddly quiet. No arguments, no scenes. Just paperwork. Photos were taken while the cruise ship drifted somewhere through warm blue water. The first offer arrived within 10 days. A young couple expecting their first child wanted the house badly. They were pre-approved, flexible, ready to move quickly. I signed the documents at the agent's office on a Thursday afternoon. Everything happened through normal channels after that. Legal notices, certified mail, timelines. Nothing dramatic. Just the quiet machinery of contracts and ownership. 2 weeks later the cruise ship returned to port. I imagine my daughter and her husband stepping off the gangway, still smelling faintly of salt air and sunscreen. Vacation has a way of softening people. Reality waits patiently. When they arrived at the house, a notice was taped neatly to the front door. Inside the mailbox were several envelopes. The phone rang an hour later. I could hear movement in the background, drawers opening, papers shuffling. "What is this?" my daughter asked. Her voice was sharper than usual. "The house sold," I said. A pause. "You sold it?" "Yes." "But we live here." I didn't interrupt. Then her voice rose, not quite shouting but close. "Why didn't you tell us?" I thought about that question carefully. Because sometimes explanation invites negotiation. And negotiation wasn't the point anymore. "The house was never permanent," I said. More silence followed. In the background I could hear her husband speaking in a low, urgent tone. "Where are we supposed to go?" she asked. That part had an answer. I helped them find a small apartment a few towns away. Nothing luxurious, but clean and affordable. I covered the security deposit. What I didn't do was restore the old arrangement. The credit card was canceled the same week. Months later the kitchen table looks the same as it always has. Coffee cup. Mail. Sunlight across the wood. The newest credit card statement lies open in front of me. Normal charges. Normal limits. My daughter still calls occasionally. Our conversations are polite, careful, almost formal. Something between us shifted when the house sold. Not broken. Just corrected. And sometimes correction is the quietest kind of change.